This is my build diary of the GMMK Pro keyboard kit that I had pre-ordered back in December of 2020. I was on the wave of the second pre-orders, which Glorious calls a flex batch. So that means I didn't receive my order until June of 2021. But alongside with the pre-order, I have ordered several different accessories to go along with this build, including the Glorious loop station, the brass plate, and finally the Glorious coiled cable. So without any further ado, let's begin the build. For the switches, I'm going to be using ZealPC's Telios V2, Duroc V2 stabilizers, and the GMK Belafonte keycap from Drop. The Glorious brass plate will help my linear switches reach the next level of sound and feel. I do think that the light shade of blue will match the overall aesthetics of the metallic silver anodizations of the GMMK Pro keyboard kit. For lubing the switches and the stabilizers, I'm going to be using Krytox 205G0 with Tribosys 3204 as a backup. One of my favorite accessories from Glorious is definitely this lube station. This lube station has pockets for your accessories such as your film, your brush, and your lube itself. The fit and finish are also spot on, so you don't have to worry about any fitment issues. This lube station also comes with 4 rubber feet. It's pretty self-explanatory, just peel off the tape and just place them where they need to be on the reverse side. Now that I'm finished setting up my lube station, it's time to get my switches out. I won't be lubing them just yet, but I just want them out to show off. Here's a little guide on how to remove the film. I was a little bit confused the first time I bought my film and I didn't know how to remove the films themselves, or what the film even looked like. So here's a quick little guide for you all. First, all you need to do is just find the area and pull the film back. Quite often, another piece will come with it, and you will need to remove it. Just use your fingers and just pry it off. And that's it. The film is ready for installation now. Here are my stabilizers fully lubed. I'm using Teflon grease for the housing and Dielectric Grease for the wire. I've also performed the holee mod on all the stabilizers. These are a combination of Duroc and GMMK Go stabilizers. Since the housing does not fit the plate without modification, I decided to use the housing of the Go stabilizers. To me, they both look the same, but just shaped differently. The stems, the wire, and the screws are all Duroc V2. The Duroc V2 screws are also steel, so I could pick them up with any magnetic screwdriver. My biggest gripe with the GMMK Pro is that you cannot pick up the screws with a magnetic screwdriver, making it that much more annoying to build this keyboard. Next up, I will be upgrading the plate from aluminum to brass, because I really like the sound of linear switches on a brass plate. The aluminum plate weighs 3.3 ounces. The brass plate weighs 10.5 ounces. Quite a bit more than the aluminum plate, which will definitely add some heft to the build. And let's just get this out of the way. Glorious used some cheap screws. I can't for the life of me use my magnetic screwdrivers to assist me in picking up the screws while I screw in the side diffusers. Very annoying. There are two standoffs that are unsecured in this keyboard kit. They are keyed from the PCB side, so you can't insert them the wrong way. Once you insert them, just go ahead and screw them in from the plate side and you're done. You don't have to reassemble the entire keyboard kit, but I am because I don't like losing things. And this just makes it easier for me. Yes, this is going to give me more work by disassembling later, but for me, it keeps everything together. Now for the switches. With my switch opener, an even press will be enough to get it all apart. You have the stem, the top housing, the spring, and finally the bottom housing. Place the spring in the appropriate slot on the station. Now the stem. Finally, the bottom housing. Just keep all the top housings off to the side for later. Now we're at the switch lubing process. I start off by grabbing some lube from the cap. Then I go around the center stem of the bottom housing, as well as the sides. Because these are linear switches, I lube the leaf spring legs as well for the ultimate buttery feel. Next up, we have the spring. I'm only going to lube the spring ends. The first side, I'm going to freehand hold it. Then I place the lubed end of the spring into the bottom housing. I pick up the bottom housing and lube the other end of the spring. I didn't bag spring this because I think this will last a lot longer than oil-based lube. And finally, we have the stem. I use my tool to pick up the stem and place a small dab on each side, giving the priority to the sides first. Now I put the stem back into the bottom housing with the legs facing the leaf. Next, I put my film on the bottom housing and now it's ready for reassembly. After timing each switch, it takes me about a minute and a half if I'm really fast, or about 3 minutes if I'm slow. After I'm done lubing all the switches, I go through and cap the switches. You align the hole up and push down until you hear the tabs click in. Finally, let's put everything all together. Because I didn't leave it open, I would have to take the PCB and the plate out of the case. In doing so, you need to remove the knob before disassembly. You can install the switches inside the casing. However, I do prefer to install the switches this way because it's much easier. You can avoid bent pins by aligning the switch pins to the PCB hot swap sockets. Keycaps are the last process of this build. I install the keycaps before adding the case. It's just easier so if you run into any issues, you don't have to use a keycap puller. I'm using my phone as a reference guide to make sure I'm placing the keycaps properly. I've been planning this keyboard build since back in December of 2020 when I first pre-ordered this keyboard. Now this is the first time I have lubed all the switches, and it took approximately 9 hours. Though it was longer than I expected, I believe it was definitely worth it in the end. So please, enjoy the following typing test so you could hear what I've created. Thank you.